The time now is 5:05. Good evening and welcome to the November 11th, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I'm Dr. Felton Moss, Committee Chair and District 7 Board Member. It brings me great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. For those unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. Now we'll have a roll call. Ms. Johnson, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Present.
Miss Olivia, Miss Brown,
Here.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Miss Walker, Mr. Jackson. There are 3 present.
All right. There are 3 present. With a quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee meeting will come to order. If there are no objections, the committee shall adopt the November 2025 meeting agenda. All right. The question is, shall the committee adopt the November 2025 meeting agenda? Is there any discussion? Ms. Johnson, will you please take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Miss Olivia, Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Miss Brown.
Aye.
Miss Walker. There are 3 in the affirmative.
There being no objections, the November 11th meeting agenda is adopted. Approval of meeting minutes. If there are no corrections, the September 16th, 2025 meeting minutes shall be approved as distributed. Does anyone have any corrections? All right. There are no corrections. The minutes are approved. We'll move to public comment at this time. Ms. Johnson, I believe we have no public comments. Can you affirm that, or do we have other public comments?
No, that's correct. There are no public speakers at this meeting.
Okay, we have no public speakers this evening. At this time, we will move to our legislative update. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh for the legislative update.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to just 2 things that I have for the legislative update. One is that I did have the board office post on our agenda the platform, the legislative platform, because originally you saw that platform when it was in draft form, and since then it went to communication. Well, first of all, it was updated to the 4 major priorities. If you recall, in legislative day, the request from the legislators was that they wanted to know what it was we how much did it cost, and why. So if you look at the 4 major our legislative priorities, the big ones, it does lay out specifically those particular things that the legislators requested. And then, of course, it goes into our ongoing priorities, which we call key measures for success. So I thought you might like to see the up-to-date version. And it is, I don't know, Mia, if you want, I don't know if you want to see it on the screen or not, but it is on your, you should be able to access it through your agenda. Communications did a nice job of adding a lot of little pictures to it and stuff to make it good. And you can just scroll through. If you can keep going. I will point out. So for example, here, supporting students with disabilities, then it talks about 4 major areas and talks about what that would cost for us annually, and then what the rationale is behind that request. And then if you go to the next one, we have the same thing for the multilingual students. in terms of what the funding requests are and what, why we want it, how much, and then why we're making that request. And then if you go then into, I think the next one has to do with, the modernizing construction of facilities for success, same type of thing, tells you how much, what it is we want, how much it costs and why. And then the very last one is safety and safe and secure environments for students. And we have it broken out for the legislators so that they can, it's a clear picture. They know exactly what we're requesting. And then if you move into the rest of the document, if you could just scroll through very quickly, it lays out each of the areas in terms of, we have implementation of blueprint and what we support and oppose. And then, and you get into, if you scroll down a little bit further, adequate funding, it just lays all those out, each of our priorities. So I am asking the printing office to make some copies so that it would be available, that if, when you go to Annapolis, if you want to take some with you to share with legislators, you can do that. So, is there any questions?
Committee
think
members,
that's
do you
it.
have any questions for Ms. Welsh before I do? Ms. Welsh, when do we plan to send this out to the delegation? Are they going to get this in advance of December 1?
Yes, in fact, we can put it, Lolita had sent them a link to where they can access everything. So what we can do is put that in there and send an email to them telling them that this is now available for them.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to, maybe we should just formulate an email and send to them. And with this copied, and then it could also be uploaded to their folder so that they're clear before December 1 when they go to actually, just maybe we could ask the administration to send this out broadly to all of the PGCPS stakeholders and include them in it too.
Well, I can talk to Dr. Collins about that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. And then the only other thing, so that's it for the platform. And then the only other thing was what we just talked about 2 seconds ago, which has to do with the Maryland State Board of Education was addressed it's COMAR regulations that are called local boards of education. It has to do rules for meetings. And there was language in that regulation that went into detail about requiring that, first of all, that all board meetings would have to be in person, which ours are, but a lot of the systems have hybrid board meetings. But if you recall, we just had worked on board members being able to attend virtually in certain circumstances, that particular policy, and had these regulations move forward, if they did end up being passed, we would not have been able to have that as an option. And then the other piece had to do with it, had inferred that all committee meetings would also have to be in person. And so both Chair Moss and Chair Jackson did send comments to the Maryland State Board of Education, as well as Maryland Association of Board of Eds sent comments and statements. And then I want to say Baltimore City, and with basically very similar comments related to the concerns about not allowing a hybrid meeting, as well as the committee meetings, especially for all of you, all the board members in Prince George's County. You go to a lot of committee meetings. So if you had to be out every single night traveling to the different committee meetings, in addition to all the other events and activities that you're involved in, that would really be, pretty burdensome and actually, when you're talking about public comment, a part of the part is to get public comment. I think it's actually, for the public, it's probably easier for them to be able to provide public comment through a virtual avenue versus having to come in person, or send something to a actual in-person meeting. So the state board, before it even went out for publication, the state board did make those 2 changes that you'll see in green. And one is the fact that hybrid meetings are allowed. So for our policy that we're looking at, the possibility of where an individual needs to attend virtually, that would still be standing. And then the other piece is that we don't have to have committee meetings in person; they can be virtual. So it's encouraging to see the power of contacting in this instance was the state board, but they did respond positively. So that was the other thing I wanted to share.
Colleagues, do you all have any questions for Ms. Welsh? The state board chair did email us back as well, and was, highly receptive of our feedback. And we know we had support, from some of the other board members at the meeting. And thank you for working on this, Ms. Welsh. Just want to underscore the point that Ms. Welsh laid out, that this will go back out before the state board takes it up. So we got a little bit more of a process, but they heard us out, even before they, brought the policy forward. Any other questions, comments from colleagues? Board Member Brown?
Thank you so much, Dr. Moss. I had a quick question. I know that you mentioned hybrid. Are you saying that for this, it's going to allow, I guess, our in-person meetings to be hybrid as well? I wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
So some systems actually, they do call it hybrid. For us, I was referring to the policy that you all worked on at the last committee meeting, where if and we have it where it's in unforeseen circumstances where you're in a situation where you want to be able to attend, but unfortunately because of something that's happened, you're not able to be there in person, so you are able to attend virtually. That had the original language went through, then that we would have had to, say goodbye to the policy. But we will, because of this change in language, we will be able to allow, if a board member needs to come in virtually for like a business meeting or a work session, they can do that. This won't impact that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? All right, seeing that there are none, thank you, Ms. Welsh, for the legislative update. We will move to item 7.0, proposed policies, presentation and discussion. There are 4 more items for discussion. There will be 2 rounds per item during discussion, and each round will be 2.5 minutes. If a third round is required, a vote will be taken. Committee members, I do want to remind you that members should submit your revision requests through the policy recommendation form to be able to strengthen and reserve time. So I just want to flag that for you. Item 7.1, we will start with approving a revision to the committee work plan for school year 25-26. At this time, the chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to present her guest speakers and provide an update on the committee work plan for school year 25-26. Ms. Welsh.
Okay, so the work plan, the changes that are occurring is that we have added the pre-K to 3 literacy promotion and retention policy, which is a new policy that we did not have previously, as well as we are also bringing back a parent and community advisory council. And in return, because we don't want to be having so many policies that we get jammed up in the meetings and they all end up getting backlogged, we have taken out the policy on grants and the other one on bonding of officers for this school year. So that is something that is a change to the work plan that you had originally voted on. So I don't know, Dr. Moss, if you want to have them vote on this first to get the work plan out of the way, and then we can go into the presentation.
Yeah, we will vote on the work plan and then we can go into the presentation. So I think you just went over all the changes that we're making to the work plan. The question is, shall the committee recommend committee work plan 25-26 to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Is there any discussion at this time? Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Olivia, Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Walker. There are 3 in the affirmative.
There are 3 in the affirmative. Committee work plan for school year 25-26 will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. At this time, I'm going to recognize Ms. Welsh again for a presentation from her committee members. This is going to be focused on a new policy, Policy 5117, that I am most excited about, that I've had the opportunity to work with the administration on. So super excited about this. Ms. Welsh, please present your guest speakers and provide an update on Policy 5117.
Yes, so we're very fortunate to have with us this evening Dr. Judith White, who is our Chief of Academics. And I believe, did you bring some people with you, Dr. White?
I did. I brought my Director of Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Kia McDaniel, and my Coordinating Supervisor of Literacy and Language, Dr. Victoria Holmes. And so, go ahead, Robin.
No, you go. It's your opportunity to present.
Awesome. So, greetings, everyone. Good evening. Hello, Chair Moss. What we would like to do is Victoria is going to share her screen, if that's okay. Victoria, you don't have to go through the whole presentation because we will share this with the board members that are on here. But what we did bring for you tonight, just so that you're aware, is that MSDE has a pre-K through grade 3 literacy policy. We wanted to just go over some quick highlights around it. We wanted to then tell you what we're doing as a result of it, which includes the retention component. Victoria, then we want to kind of explain what we put into our draft policy. And then we just wanted you to have, we don't have to go over that this evening, to also know that every LEA had to create a comprehensive literacy plan. So we worked on the literacy plan before we ever got the literacy policy. So the plan is just what's always in place. It's our strategic plan to approach literacy. However, the pre-K 3 literacy policy is what will be aligning to the board policy that you have referenced. And we have created or edited our current retention and promotion policy. So Victoria, if you want to skim the steps, go through, get us to where we have our tools, and we'll stop there, and then we'll let them ask questions. We'll dig into the policy a little bit. And then if they have any further questions about the plan, the comprehensive literacy plan, we can go into that. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Holmes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present to you today. So just a little bit about why we have our pre-K to 3rd grade literacy policy. So this is MSDE's policy, and it's geared just towards making sure that all of our students in Prince George's County Public Schools, as well as the state of Maryland, have equitable, effective, and evidence-based reading instruction to prepare them for long-term success. So as you all may know, Maryland used to be really high on the charts as far as our reading performance, but it has declined. So this policy will prioritize some of those foundational literacy skills that we know is aligned to the science of reading and are essential for students to be proficient readers. So this policy promotes instructional equity, enhances our literacy outcomes, and as I said, builds the foundation, a strong foundation for future success, regardless of students' background, linguistic diversity, socioeconomic status, geographic location, or any specific learning needs. So there are 4 components in the policy. The first is the system of support for educators. So this is primarily making sure that our teachers are trained and equipped in the science of reading, as well as our administrators. So any staff member who supports pre-K through 3rd grade, that they are trained in the science of reading. We report annually on the number of staff trained, and this part makes sure that our teachers also receive some type of support in the classroom, so coaching is provided for our teachers. The second part is reading instruction, assessment, and intervention. This really outlines one, having a strong core tier 1 reading program aligned in the science of reading, utilizing our high quality instructional materials that align to our Maryland College Career Readiness Standards, as well as having a system of assessments that include a universal screener, diagnostic surveys, and progress monitor to make sure that we are monitoring student growth towards grade level reading. And if students are experiencing any reading difficulties, we're providing some type of supplemental instruction for them. I'm sorry I have to move you all out of the way. All right, and the third part of this of the policy is parent and guardian notification and student reading improvement plans. So when students have reading difficulty or they're not meeting their grade level reading proficiency from pre-K to third grade, they're required to have a student reading improvement plan that outlines the supplemental instructional supports the students will be afforded, which may include some interventions. This is a written notification, and parents are involved in the creation of the plan as well as being notified throughout the year of the progress of students. All interventions, of course, have to be evidence-based. We outline the frequency and the intensity of the plan, and it's reviewed annually. And then the fourth part is demonstrating readiness for promotion. As Dr. White mentioned, we have had to revise our retention and promotion policy to align to the MSDE pre-K literacy, pre-K third grade literacy policy. So in order for our students in third grade to be promoted to fourth grade, they must demonstrate reading proficiency. They will be recommended for retention if they are not proficient readers, but they can be promoted with good cause. And MSDE has outlined very specific criteria for good cause promotion. So these are the actions that Prince George's County has already taken towards meeting the components of the policy. As far as our support for our educators, we have trained as of September 15, 1,044 teachers. That's not including our administrators that have been trained, administrators, including principals, assistant principals, ILTs, and other support staff. We provide coaching to teachers via our early literacy support team. We provide ongoing professional development and support for teachers and administrators to implement and monitor our core curriculum. As it relates to reading instruction and assessment and intervention, we have, and we're constantly revising curriculum, ensuring that we are using high quality instruction materials, and we have an established system of assessment with universal screeners, diagnostics, and interventions for progress monitoring. When it comes to a parent and guardian notification, this is where we are still working to build a student reading intervention plan. It will be housed in our Synergy student information system. And those plans, of course, will help us to monitor student progress and also keep our families notified of our student progress. And then the last section, as far as our demonstrating readiness for promotion, AP 5123.2 is actually in revision as we speak. We had to submit our rough draft to MSDE by September 1st. That was done. We have thus received feedback, and there were 2 areas where we made some additional revisions. And once approved, that will be sent back to MSDE for approval before it is submitted through our Prince George's County Public Schools AP process. And then here, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. When you get to the next slide on our resources, I want to jump in. You can finish this slide.
Okay, so this is just the timeline for the policy. As you can see, beginning in last school year, teachers were trained, started to be trained in 3 specific professional development opportunities that were approved by MSDE. And as you can see, the promotion and retention policy submitted, the annual report for the number of teachers who have been trained had to be sent on September 15th. This year, MSDE will be reviewing instructional materials, so they have not yet come out with our HQIM report, but we will learn of what materials and resources are approved. September 1st, we submitted the annual report for the district's board policies and procedures for promotion, as stated before. One thing we're consistently working on is our MTSS process for not only for pre-K through 5, but pre-K through 12th grade. That should be in place with the school reading improvement plan next school year. So that's something that will be in place. And MSDE will be looking at universal screeners to also provide to all LEAs those approved screeners. And the implementation of the retention portion of the literacy policy will go into effect school year 27-28. So now we have our resources. Dr. White?
Sure. So I just wanted to show you, and I think what you've heard from Victoria is all of the things that are in the policy we're working towards right now. The good thing is everything that we have to do, MSDE, we have to submit and they review, submit and we get feedback and we fix. When we did the draft plan, and this is where I want to end the presentation, and I'll make sure again that you all have this in case you want to look at the comprehensive literacy plan. But I want Victoria to pull up what you'll have here is our draft retention policy. But what I want her to pull up is the policy checklist so that you know that while we had a promotion and retention policy, there were areas that MSDE said certain things had to be in our policy. And so what we did, and while we worked through this process, we communicated with Chair Moss, is making sure that we took all of these components, that we overlaid it to our current procedure, and that everything was there. The 2 improvements that we had to make were simply making sure that some of the language was exactly the same. For example, if a student isn't doing well, they will be put in an intervention or an extra support before school or after school. They wanted to make sure that we had specific language that we will communicate directly with the family. So while we may have said certain things, they wanted it in certain places. So that was one area. In the other area, Dr. Holmes, you remember what the first one was? It was on page 6.
The other one was for the good cause criteria. We had to have the word only. So only those criteria listed would be was considered for good cause promotion.
So once we make those adjustments to our administrative procedure, we will share it back with Chair Moss and Ms. Welsh so that you all can review it, so that your policy basically supports what we put in the administrative procedure, because we want to just make sure that we're in alignment. So all the things that you've put forth, and I know with other things that are coming, we just wanted you to know that we are working. We wanted you to see the timeline, and we wanted you to know that we're hitting the markers to everything that MSD has said. The next phase that they will start is to, like Victoria says, start looking at our high quality materials. So that will go across the whole entire state. The other thing is we are uplifting off the ground 2 literacy labs in elementary schools. That will be coming soon. Once we get it up and going, we can definitely invite this group to come look at those practices. We currently have a math lab that is actually super strong. We would love for you to come out to that as well. Additionally, I'm happy to announce that MSDE has received a grant where we will begin getting literacy coaches in the majority of our elementary schools. So we're going to start, Victoria and her team are working. I think we're going to start out with about 9 to 12 coaches that I believe they've already hired. We're going to probably do a hybrid model to put some of them in our innovation zone and some of them in a couple of our ATSI schools that are not in the zone. And the reason for that principle is, what does it look like in this zone where we are pushing in a lot of support, and what does it look like in schools that's not in that zone, so that we can kind of, measure where we're seeing the growth, what kind of things happen, what supports we're wrapping around, to kind of give us something to compare. So again, we're open for any questions that you may have. We just wanted you to know that we are working and we are in alignment definitely with your policy, and we wanted to make sure our administrative procedure is in alignment.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Welsh, do we want to go through the policy now? Might be good to go through the policy now, but I want to see if my colleagues have any questions for Dr. Holmes, Dr. White, and the literacy team. And let me just say, I'll say this publicly. We have one of the best literacy teams in the state of Maryland, and I'll put them next to anybody. And so I'm just really excited for the work that you all are doing. Thank you for leading so passionately, so integrally, and making sure PGCPS is well ahead of where we need to be on literacy work. Y'all already know how I feel about literacy work. It's like my heart work, so I'm not even going to tangent. We'll talk about it when we talk about the board policy, but I just want to make sure we celebrate folks who are really doing great work. So thank y'all.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions, Ms. Welsh, let's move to a review of the policy.
Sure.
Our team needed, Chairman Moss.
I think we're good, unless you may want to hang back. Committee members may want to add language or something, and you may need to be able to tell us the unintended or intended consequences of whatever committee members may recommend.
Okay.
But I won't hold you after that, Dr. White. Ms. Welsh?
Okay, so the first part of the policy just is a policy statement. And it says that we are, this Board of Education is committed to ensuring that every student pre-K through grade 3 receives a strong foundation in literacy necessary for long-term academic success. And then that the board also believes that students should advance through the early grades only when they've developed the skills needed to be successful at the next level. And that research shows that because students learn at different rates and some require longer to master specific academic skills, early intervention is necessary to ensure they master basic literacy skills. And some of that language also came from 5117 that was listed there. And then the purpose of the policy is designed to promote instructional equity, enhance literacy outcomes, and build a strong foundation for future academic success, regardless of students' cultural background, linguistic diversity, social economic status, and geographic location, and specific learning needs. And then there are some definitions, and several of these definitions I did pull out of the Maryland State Department of Education's literacy policy. So that we're in alignment there. And then the standards, these are basically everything that Dr. White and Ms. Holmes shared in their presentation in terms of what is required by Maryland State Department of Education. First piece being equitable access to high quality evidence-based literacy instruction for all students pre-K through 3rd grade, then early identification for any of those students who are at risk of reading difficulties through the appropriate screenings and assessments, And then a utilization of program-specific monitoring tools so that the schools can collect and analyze their intervention data to make instructional decisions. And then the provision of timely supplemental reading instruction aligned to students' identify needs and targeted interventions for any students demonstrating reading difficulties. Then a process for notifying the parents of any pre-K student who exhibits difficulty in reading at any time, and for engaging parents as active partners in monitoring and supporting their child's literacy development. Utilization of multiple measures of student learning to inform promotion and retention decisions, a clear process for considering promotion and retention in alignment with Maryland laws and law and regulations, and then parent notification of the designation for promotion or retention and the informed consent process to students' parents at the end of third grade. And then ongoing reporting and review of data to ensure practices are implemented consistently and equitably across all the schools. It also says the superintendent designee must ensure that all general education teachers, special ed teachers, teachers of multilingual learners, and administrators in grade pre-K through 3 have received training in the science of reading by September 1st of each school year. Then implementation of responsibilities. The first piece is, of course, this, which they're already working on, though, is the administrative procedure that would align with this policy so that it can be implemented. And then the fact that this policy should come up for review every 3 years, because there, I'm sure as we progress through the years, there will be changes in the board, the state boards, state MSD's policy, and even in the research, so that we can stay up to date with that. And then in addition to reporting to MSD, which is again another requirement we have, and there's a wide variety of things that we have to report to MSD. I also include that the report would be provided annually to the Board of Education, because I'm certain, just as MSD wants to see our progress, I know the board would absolutely want to see our progress. So this just lays out the what would be required in that reporting. And then the last thing, which they also discussed, Victoria had discussed tonight, was that the superintendent designee shall submit to MSD by September 15th of each school year a list of all the teachers and administrators that received training in science reading. So it's pretty much aligned to much of what was shared this evening in terms of what you all have put together, both for the movement of your AP as well as implementing the Maryland State Department of Education's policy.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh, for going over this policy with us. I just want to say to my colleagues, this will be once again that PGCPS is ahead of the game in comparison to other districts in the state. So we don't really have another policy to go off of. This is a PGCPS, first stab at this. So I want to make sure we engage and give comments around this. So I want to see if my colleagues have any questions about the draft policy. I've got a couple more comments at the end, but I want to turn it over to my colleagues and see if you have questions or comments. Dr. White, did you have something before?
Yeah, the only comment that I had on the policy, I know it indicates training by September 1, but right now CE provides us with many opportunities for teachers to be trained. And for example, science of reading isn't a one-stop, like you come to a PD. While teachers will get touched at the beginning of the year, we send out all of those trainings, which could be 3 months, 4 months on their own to come in a cohort. So we may just want to say every year we're making sure that opportunities are provided to grab any teacher who hasn't been trained, versus we do have to submit by September 15th. That date was fine, but I think September 1 is not realistic, because those trainings go on can go on for months.
I'll take that out, the September 1.
I do think it's fine to say that the superintendent designee will continually provide opportunities for all teachers who have not been trained and follow through to ensure that training information is provided to get teachers trained.
Okay.
Let's talk about that language in just a second. I've got a thought on it too. I'm glad you flagged that for us. I've got a thought on it too. We had an interesting intent there, so I want to make sure we work through that. Thank you, Dr. White, for flagging it for us. Board Member Vice Chair Briggs.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Moss. I think this might be a question for MSDE, but definitely I'm curious to hear what Dr. White and the team have to say. Also have some comments just about ways that I think we can make the policy more comprehensive. I think that all the things that you all shared is really clear. But I really would want to kind of make this a bit more thorough maybe. But so for standards under 5, where it talks about like the process for notifying parents, I know that that I believe it was Ms. Holmes and Dr. White had shared that there's parent view and that there's synergy and that parents can see in there, kind of keep track of things. But one of the things that I was thinking about was just like accessibility and families' ability to understand something that, is like it's one of those things where it's like it's so important because you can sign off and give consent to say that I'll have my child retained in 3rd grade, but the implications of that aren't always clear for families. We always know that people say yes and then they think about it later and they're like, wait, what does that mean? And is there some way for families to kind of like in a very easy way, like see like red, yellow, green, right? Like, are they are they in progress in the app or in whatever they're using, so that it's like it's almost explicit for them to see it. So one of the pieces was just like, what about accessibilities for families to keep track of this information? Maybe even frequent reports that might just be like a color scale or something around students not meeting grade level expectations, and then just making it as accessible as possible. And I see your hand, Dr. White, so I can pause there. I had some other things too, but
So what I was simply going to say is, so Dr. Joseph is committed to ensuring that we find ways to communicate with families early and often through our different measures. So for example, those younger students will take a universal screener. Us communicating with families how they do on a universal screener every year and what that means for them as related to their grade level peers, not just in Prince George's County, but across the United States. The other thing is, while the state policy does say by 3rd grade, I think our obligation is to really look at students earlier than 3rd grade. We don't have to wait to 3rd grade to determine if we believe a student is so off the mark to not have foundational skills to move forward. What I would just caution this group, again, I'm not controlling your group. I know that you all have the right to do it, what you choose, is your policy should guide our administrative procedure. Your policy shouldn't go so far in depth that you make our administrative procedure impossible to implement. I think you tell us based like what you just did, and then that helps us on our side with the administrative procedure. Motion some of those things. We want to keep policy where it's real, like giving us that tight guidance, but not getting in the weeds. But we'll definitely take what you say and any of those other feedbacks and do it on our side through, how we engage and through how we implement the administrative procedure.
Yeah, exactly. And the goal is like not to be restrictive at all in any way, but just to the point, right? Policy should be broad enough where it can be even evergreen, so that we're not like year to year being like, should we change this because this is too much. So I completely agree with you. And it was just around accessibility. I wanted to make sure we had language in there around kind of like making it as accessible as possible, because I do think that could be a potential issue in the worst case scenario. I don't think that'll probably be the case in most instances, but for the worst case. I don't see a timer, so I'm just gonna really quickly give my last two, and then I probably have
I think you're up on time, but I'll give it to you.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say I wondered if 6 was redundant. And if it's not redundant, I already know that I believe Ms. Holmes said that evidence-based practices are already included in their evidence-based, research-based measures to kind of inform decision making. And I think Dr. White now, or it says in this policy, I think Ms. Wolf said it every 3 years it's revisited. So you all are looking at the plan. This is really going to just frame like my last part, which I'll get to after because I think I'm up with time. But I wanted to say, what just wasn't clear if 6 was kind of saying the same thing, and if we just probably want to look at that and see if like either we want to differentiate 6 and 7 a bit to be a bit more clear, or if Ms. Welsh, you wanted to provide any context there.
I'll clarify for you too, just to give you a little. I think Ms. Welsh, perhaps she can clarify this herself. I had wrote a whole nother policy that was extremely, for lack of better words, was overreach in terms of a board policy. It was more reading like an administrative procedure. And so Dr. White and I worked through this, and then Ms. Welsh did her magic trick on it. But the intent between 6 and 7, though, is to really think about good cause exemption as well, and having multiple measures to determine whether a kid can move on or not. I do see an opportunity for bringing 6 and 7 together, but I think 6 and 7 separately actually serves different purposes here. But I can totally see why you would merge them, Vice Chair Briggs. I just wanted to answer your question so you wouldn't be left out there.
Yeah, and it's fine too. I just wasn't clear. I was like, I thought the state would have clarified because they had that whole regulatory process around what the language meant in the open public comment piece. I just wasn't sure if like they already have clarifications around like the multiple measures that are going to be used to kind of identify these things, and if that was a consideration. I guess that really was the question, was like, is this a part of the kind of process that's already built and established by the Maryland State Department of Education? And
So-
whoever can answer that, yeah.
So because remember, this part isn't going to get implemented until school year 27-28. So the state is still identifying what those measures are. So leaving it open to say multiple measures, they may give us an opportunity to say, okay, if you get a certain score here, but you have an A or a B. So because we don't know yet, and we kind of left it loosey-goosey until that part is tightened up.
You good, Vice Chair Briggs?
Yes, thank you so much.
Cool, cool. Colleagues, any other questions around this? All right. Seeing that I see a hand. Seeing that there's no more first round, I do have a first round, and I should have said this earlier. When we worked on this, I only have one question, and we should have done this I should have said this earlier on standard 2, but Dr. White, I need you to tell me if I'm in left field here, but I think you all already do this, and this may be me being more restrictive again. Under standard 2, I'm a little cautious for us just to say early here. I'd like to say quarterly. I know that's dramatic, but you all already do this based on what we've seen. So how much of a problem in board policy would it be if we say quarterly identification of students who are at risk and reading difficulties, and then going down to do the same thing with notification for parents? And I'm just really trying to make sure that when you and I are not here, people do this quarterly. And if that's taken care of in the admin procedure and I missed it, please let me know.
So let me tell you the process, and then the team can decide which way they'd want to move. So we do DIBELS screening at the beginning of the year. We'll come behind ourselves. So that's September. We come behind ourselves in December or January. Victoria, correct me when I'm right. And then we come back behind ourselves in like April, May. So 3 times a year, we provide that DIBELS, anybody that is at risk. We call it early screening. You're just talking about the early ages, right? So whoever went upon being screened goes into immediately intervention. And then we're testing again in that whole December to check, did they get better? Right. And then we do the same thing. They're back in intervention. They stay in intervention, and we test again. So it's 3 times a year that we do the assessment. So it's not really quarterly. It's 3 times a year.
Okay. So what if we just said annually here? Right. I just think the early is just like with no timeline for me.
That early indication is actually indicating in the early 8th grade levels, not as in early in the school year. So it's saying early identification, but we can say, you could say yearly identification, but know that anytime we give a measure, we're going to give it usually with our early identification measures is 3 times a year.
Okay.
So those administrations, parents are communicated with how their children are doing.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to have yearly there, whatever's the way. I just want it to happen yearly. I know we do it yearly, but should we leave here, somebody may decide not to do it yearly. They would need to change the board policy if they didn't. Ms. Welsh.
That actually, I was going to ask that question, so I'm good. I just put that in.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, colleagues, any other questions on this?
And
Board Member Vice Chair Briggs.
before he starts, what I would say is I will send also, even though it's in this presentation, when I send a presentation, I'll also explicitly send the new draft of our promotion administrative procedure so that all of you can look at it one beside the other.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Vice Chair Briggs.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about this practically too. Like, there are a few assumptions that I feel like are part of this, and our policy can go a bit beyond what necessarily is clarified for me at MSDE. One of the things that I was curious about, and Dr. White, maybe you can answer this or someone on your team, but longitudinally, I mentioned this the other day, like if we're thinking about from the start of this program until, let's say, 5-10 years out, longitudinally, are there any quantitative or qualitative outcomes around student progress or, you know, students that are retained, like I guess what I'm thinking, I should just put it in plain language here, is like, what if we are holding a student back, but it has behavioral impacts on them, or it has like something around like, you know, they're just their mindset of like, can I succeed in school? Like, is MSDE requiring any kind of like tracking of disproportionality, or are there more students in certain subgroups that are going to be targeted, not intentionally, but just because of just the, you know, just the circumstance, that show up more in being retained versus another group of students?
Sure.
Is any of that part of this?
So I'll answer it this way. As of yet, we've not had those explicit conversations. However, when you look at my administrative procedure, you'll see those good faith identifiers that Victoria was talking about. The other thing you'll identify is that we have to have MTSS. And the reason that is because you could have a child who is not doing well based on academics. It could be behavior or it could be attendance. So the first thing you have to do in that MTSS process is figure out why a child isn't successful and then backtrack there. That's why we don't have necessarily the answer yet to the multiple measures, and we don't have answers yet to what will happen. I think as MSDE continues to work through this process and you work through parents, you also have students, your special education students, your multilingual learners. So those good faith reasons of why you wouldn't hold a child back, put those safeguards around what you're directly speaking to. And I think it's going to give the latitude to school districts to say, here's a set of circumstances for this child, and then this is how we all engage. But I see both my team members have their hands up. So either I have said things that are incorrectly public, excuse me, or they just want to add context. So I will let them both jump in.
No, it was, you didn't say anything wrong. I just wanted to highlight the student reading improvement plan that starts in pre-K. So we're not waiting till third grade to identify when there's a reading difficulty. That is showing up in pre-K, first, second, and third grade. So when we recognize that there's a reading difficulty, intervention supplemental instruction is being put in place so that we're monitoring. So we're not waiting till third grade to be able to determine whether or not a student is going to need to be retained or not.
It looks like we've got one more hand here. Did that clarify what you all were trying to do, Dr. McDaniel and Dr. Holmes?
Yes, I was just going to add that we do have to submit data on the students that are either being retained and those students who are performing below grade level. So we will be, when we have that data, we'll be doing our own analysis of who are the students within those categories, so that, to your question, Board Member Briggs, of like, is there overrepresentation in different categories of students? And what are we doing about that? What do our interventions look like for our students, and how we can correct that if that does come into play. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that MSDE currently has a draft adolescent literacy policy that is being reviewed. And so that's the longevity of across literacy in general in the state that we're going to be considering as well. So we'll have a full picture of how students are performing across time, continuing, you know, those pieces of assessing students' reading abilities across time.
And board member, we come to academic achievement in December and we bring the current data as is. We'll have dibbles so we can look at that data, and it may be then that we start saying, even though we're not at 27, 28, like if we break that down by demographics, like, so we can, during that presentation, we could look a little deeper.
Yeah.
Like, can I say this last thing, Dr. Moss? Because I know I'm over on time. I just want to see if they can answer this. But like, also, can a student be held back multiple times? So let's say that they make it to third grade. Okay, so
Right.
there's a cutoff. It's one time, and then if they don't make it or they're not proficient, they just get pushed forward.
Well, I think you work, so, you know, it's no different than we have students, our special education students, you constantly have to be working on acceleration and remediation at the same time. So I think you constantly have to push a student, but you have to say, so at what point do you have a student in middle school that's should be 12 and you have a 14-year-old, right? So there are things that we as a system have to put in place. That's why you get to high school and you have, in middle school and high school, you have our non-traditional programs, because now you're building wraparound supports in a different way than you would in your comprehensive. And that's why we build those outliers programs for those students.
And thank y'all so much for answering all the questions. I do have one recommendation that's connected to Vice Chair Briggs' concern. What we may be able to do under number 5, Ms. Welsh, in C, given that this policy already requires the superintendent to report out, perhaps we could add the language to include a gap analysis. I mean, they're going to give the data anyway. The data team is likely going to provide a gap analysis, but we could codify it in board policy, Vice Chair Briggs, that they would give a gap analysis that would look at all the indicators, because it's already in C. So I don't know if that would satisfy your concern there, Vice Chair Briggs, but it is an opportunity there. And I think I would like to see a gap analysis. But let me know if that gets to what you're trying to do.
Well, I actually don't think I know what the technical term of a gap analysis is. If you want to clarify, then that might be the silver bullet here of what I was talking about.
A gap analysis is essentially where you would create a report that just shows the gaps across learners from different groups. So if it's SES students, if it's special education students, you would just provide subgroup data and show the gaps between the control group.
I think that's getting at it. Honestly, I think Dr. White was going down the direction of where I was going, which is that, well, actually, I think it was Dr. White and Dr. McDaniel who was saying like across time. I'm just trying to say, are there patterns? And I don't necessarily want to wait for the state to mandate us to do it, because I think we can do it. And I think that we can kind of identify like, where are our students headed? And what are what are the outcomes here? Like, is this a good thing? And we may have data that we can submit to the state and be I think you were saying this, Dr. Moss, like a leader in the state around, kind of like really setting the tone for what this looks like in implementation and how it evolves over time. So that's really my piece, is like, I want to see if we can do something around the data analytics to also identify what is the impact of the implementation of this policy over time on students.
Yeah, I just, I get you. Ms. Welsh, I would just add language here, say year over year or year after year gap analysis or annual.
Okay.
And then we can talk to Chief Strader between now and where the policy goes forward and see if there's a different way to say that, or if there's not a need to say it. But I get where Vice Chair Briggs is wanting to go with this, and I think it's perfect. Other colleagues have any questions or comments? All right. Well, if there are no comments, thank you all for spending time with us tonight. It's always great. And the literacy policy will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Could you please take the roll, Ms. Johnson?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Olivia,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Brown.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 5117 literacy will move on to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Next up is policy 8100, Board of Education standing committees and focus groups. And before Ms. Welsh reviews this policy, I made a recommendation 2 meetings ago, and I'm withdrawing my recommendations, given my own research around the feasibility of implementation, which was to add a committee, a member from one of our parent organizations to each of our board committees. So I just want to make sure I withdraw my recommendation tonight as it relates to this. I know the policy hasn't moved on because we needed some research, but I just wanted to flag at the onset of the conversation that I'm withdrawing my recommendation due to my own research. I was a little too excited there and didn't think about implementation. So I just want to say that at the start. Ms. Welsh, the chair recognized you to provide an overview of policy 8100, Board of Education standing committees and focus work groups.
So, so this policy, when we discussed it the last time, really what we ended up doing, I had added a lot of language in to accommodate your recommendations. So I will go back and take that out where it talks about parent and community member for the
Sorry.
standing committees. So, which will be fine. And then, but I will share a little bit about what I did research and find out, because it sort of supports your thought about removing this language. So, so that'll be good. Then also, this particular policy does go in to talk, includes language about the two advisory councils. And let me see if I can find this where it says the advisory committees established by the board may include but are not limited to. And then it says at least one citizens advisory committee to provide community advice and assistance on problems and policies of the board, and then at least one special education issues advisory committee to provide advice on the implementation of board policies, accessibility of facilities, and employment and hiring issues. But I don't know if you want to include both of those pieces of language in there only because of the and the first part, the A and then C, which talks about advisory committees at the school level, both of those come from the law. That's language in the law. But as far as the Citizens Advisory Issues Committee to provide advice on implementing it, I do know at the DIAB meeting, the Disabilities Issues Advisory Committee, they had asked that we put stronger language in requiring the Disabilities Advisory Committee. But I think that we haven't addressed that policy yet, so I'm not certain we want to maybe we want to hold on that one provision B until after we've had the opportunity to also address the other policy. I don't know. I'm just, I don't want to be ahead of myself, and then we later have to come back. And then the other piece of this that we added to it was to talk, originally we had the superintendent and Board of Education Evaluation Committee, which I think was going to be a standing committee. And then the recommendation was, well, this doesn't make sense because those committees aren't necessarily working all year long. They're really their purpose is both to come up with an evaluation tool and then complete the evaluation. And so instead of using as just a regular standing committee, I changed it to ad hoc committees for both the superintendent and the Board of Education. So those were the major changes. I did want to share though that when in reviewing all of the different counties, I could only find one county that talked about having a Citizens Advisory Committee member actually attend some of the standing committees. But other than that, none of the other counties had any citizen present in the board's actual standing committees. I will say this, that many of the counties had numerous citizens advisory committees over a lot of different topics and subjects. They didn't just have the basic Citizens Advisory Committee. They also had some, especially the smaller counties, had these advisory councils on different academic subjects and everything that the board was involved in. And the larger counties did not do that. But there were like let's say Allegheny and like Harford County, I'm trying to think, but they didn't have standing committees either. So it might just be, maybe that's the trend in the smaller counties that they call them advisory councils or committees versus standing committees. I'm not certain. I will also say, and I while I was looking all this up, I thought I would, because this was the other conversation that had come up, I want to say in the Disabilities Advisory Committee meeting about public comment, and are we getting adequate public comment? So I went ahead and looked at all the different counties. There are numerous counties, probably 6 or 7 counties, that actually hold out 30 days for public comment instead of 2 weeks, to give the public a longer opportunity to provide comment. So that was one piece on the policies now that we're talking about it. But also there were several, I want to say probably about 5 counties, that if they had a really hot topic policy that they thought was a hot topic for the public, they would actually hold a public forum meeting specifically on the actual policy. So that was another thing that they would do in terms of their policies. In terms of policy, getting the public more involved in public. They had community meetings, things like that, so that, and it was written in their policy development policy to give them the opportunity that if they need to do that, and they really wanted the public's intake, they would go ahead and provide that. So those were the major things that I was looking for. I did also look for whether or not that there were, in terms of use of CCAC, and many of the committees, many of the counties didn't address it at all in any of their policy that I could find, but there was a large number of counties that utilized CSAC as their advisory committee for services for special education. There was only one county that I saw had a different, they called it, what did they call it? Citizens Advisory Committee on Special Ed, I think, was the only one county that offered that, but everyone else was using CCAC as their advisory committee for special education. So I think those were the main things, but it did support your request to have all the language that was previously there removed. So that's good that it all aligns.
All right, thanks for telling me how horrible I am, Miss Welch.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that at all.
No. I came to that conclusion myself, that I was a little too excited. So I'm not saying it to you. At this time, I'm going to see if any committee members have any questions for Ms. Welch or any comments as it relates to the policy. Vice Chair Olivo.
Thanks so much, Chair Moss. And I just want to apologize to everyone for being late this evening. Ms. Welch, I had a couple questions about some items on this policy. So the first one is on page 5 under the meeting schedule. We indicate that the June meeting will be used to select leadership, but earlier we indicate that the chair of the board selects the leadership. So I think that we could strike that that language, because it's not necessarily the committee members themselves, electing a chair or vice chair. It's the chair of the board will have determined who the chair and the vice chair of the committees are.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And then, and this is, partially maybe me being so new, but the other thing there is it indicates that the committee shall begin working on the work plan in June. But again, earlier it indicates that, the chair of the board won't necessarily announce the committee members until July 1. And so I didn't know if, and maybe that's okay because it says begin working on, the work plan in June, but I didn't know, fellow members, if it makes sense to really make that July, that we're working on the work plan, because that's when we'll know who the actual members of the committee are. Another section I wanted to ask about, and I realized that I'm opening a pretty big can of worms with this. I would really like to move away from the word citizen in our language and move to the word stakeholder. I know citizen can mean kind of generally a resident, but I think it also has very specific connotations for people who are citizens of the United States of America. And we know that we have many, many active and engaged family members who may not be citizens. I know this ties into a whole lot of other policies and language, but I would like to move that way. And then, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, just give me a couple more seconds. I have a final point.
You're the vice chair. Take the time you need.
Okay. Under section one of the D's on this, I apologize, I didn't write down a page number for this comment. The board ad hoc committees, it indicates that there must be at least 5 members of the board on an ad hoc committee. And I'm nervous that we would run into quorum rules such that if we have 5 or more members of the board on an ad hoc committee, that essentially becomes a full board meeting. And so wanted to raise that due to that potential issue. And those are my comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Olivo. Ms. Welsh, do you have
I
and
do
I
have,
just want to I want to flag for you. You're calling out an issue probably in the document on the ad hoc. We haven't changed this since the board shrinked in size. So I wonder if
Okay.
that's probably what's happening there. But I'll let Ms. Welsh respond to all the other questions.
so actually, I was going to say, as far as the number of the board members, that was from before, and that's probably because previously we had 14 board members. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking maybe we should be looking at maybe no more than 4 board members. That way we don't go above that.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
And then the other thing about members, the reason why we begin in June and we put a draft of the work plan together, even though the committee members may change, is because there's no meetings at all in July. So then we come back in August, and then we're looking at what was sort of the draft. And the new committee then gets the opportunity to see what's there, but it doesn't stop them at all from saying, well, you know, I don't really think we should work on this policy, but I think maybe we should include this policy. So it's really just getting us a running start to get it moving forward so that it's ready to go, just since we don't have July to meet and have a conversation. I mean, it's certainly, if you want to move it back to August, it's just that it does back it that process up. So, but it's up to you all how you want to do it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd really appreciate my fellow colleagues' thoughts on that. I think it could make sense to start, working on the work plan in June, knowing that, committee members may change. Thank you.
And the other thing, but this is not my decision, this is really the committee's decision. I do like your idea of a stakeholders advisory committee. So, but that, of course, is the committee's decision.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Briggs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think to Vice Chair of the committee, Olivo's point, I wonder if we have process-wise, like we go through the whole process, the work plan process in June. But I think that that's a really good point, that like everyone that's on the committee should be bought into it, what's on the work plan. And maybe we ratify the work plan in August. Like we just kind of said, like the P&G committee has a first meeting to ratify the work plan with the new committee members. So there's some way to like circulate, once we know who's who, we can circulate the work plan. There's a number of opportunities to kind of, engage with it. And then that meeting in August would be to kind of like clear to nail down that these are the priorities that we'll have for the school year. So that could be another way to work around it, is like the work gets started, because it does take some time. Vice Chair Olivo, and like that's part of it, is I think like what Mrs. Welsh is saying is like figuring out what's the right things, and she goes to all the different departments and like they opine on it, and then like we finally have like a plan that's in place. But I do think that also that process should really incorporate like the opinions of the people who are currently on the committee. So I think that's a great point, in my opinion.
Is that everything? I'm also in agreement with my colleagues on both matters, as well as changing to stakeholder committees. I do want to clarify under C, where we talk about advisory committees, number 1A, that one Citizens Advisory Committee is PCAC, right?
Yes.
All right. And then under B, at least one Special Education Issues Advisory Committee to provide advice. That is DIAB, right?
Well, depending on yes, depending on your conversation about DIAB tonight, that will that's yes.
Okay, cool. Just making sure I'm clear around what those are. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Welsh.
I just want to ask one question though. With Citizens Advisory Committee, since we don't even call it Citizens Advisory Committee, why not change the language to what we call it, which is actually Parent Community Advisory Committee? Isn't that what it is? PCAC?
It is. I'd love to hear Board Member Olivo's thoughts on that, given this was her first recommendation.
Yeah, I think I guess the question is, do we want to put the very specific name of what we're calling the committees now into this as the policy? Or do we want to leave it a little bit more general so that if then the names of the committees change at a later
Okay.
date, we don't have to adjust the policy? I would note, I think for B here, I think that right now is both DIAB and the Special Education Citizens Advisory. So right now it's two, which still fits because it says at least one. And again, I know some of this ties back to state law and that, these citizens is referenced in other places, but so it may take some work to undo citizens everywhere that it's mentioned, but I personally would love to start here with that because I just think it's so important to make sure that all of our families feel welcome and that citizenship is not a requirement for their engagement.
Yep. Okay. No, I think that makes sense. I don't know if other committee members want to say something different before we move on from this policy, but I think I'm in agreement with what has been laid out by my colleagues. Do others have any other revisions for this or comments or questions? We good here? All right, Ms. Welsh, I think I'm gonna take I think that covers everything here. This may change later, but there's one other point I wanted to call out. I don't know. I can't find it now, but we'll go ahead and move this one on. So the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 8100, Board of Education, standing committees and focus work groups to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Ms. Johnson, will you please take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Olivia,
I do want to note that Board Member Brown has her hand raised, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Brown, my apologies. Did you not mean to? Okay, I think she might be good. She took it down.
My vote was aye. Thank you.
I think
Mr.
she might be
Briggs,
voting. Ms. Johnson, you can continue calling the roll. We'll come back to Ms. Brown.
Mr. Briggs,
I think there's tech issues, FYI.
Ms. Brown,
Oh, she looks like she's.
So we might want to do head nod or thumbs up or something.
She said, I can't hear anything. I have to restart my computer. So let me give her a second. And legally, I can't take her vote through text message, so I'll have to wait on her. Actually, I don't have to record her vote on this one because I have a quorum. So we'll move on to Diab if that's okay. So what's the vote count?
there are 3 in the affirmative.
And then we'll do one as absent. Well, it doesn't need to do absent here. There are 3 in the affirmative. Policy 1700 Disabilities Advisory Board. No. 8100 Board of Education Standing Committees and Focus Work Groups has been moved to the policy sponsor for revision approval. All right. Now we'll move to policy 1700, the Disability Issues Advisory Boards. I'm going to ask Ms. Welsh to, provide an overview of this policy, but I do want to flag that both the committee leadership and the liaisons have been meeting with this group ongoing. So I just wanted to say that for the general public. But Ms. Welsh, if you could present the policy 1700 Disabilities Issues Advisory Board.
Okay, so I have not added or changed anything in it except to take the language that's currently in that we currently had and put it into the template that we normally use for policies so that we see a policy statement and the purpose and then the standards. I will say that the purpose of the policy in the past has been it's a disability issues advisory council to ensure that the board and the superintendent have a variety of opinions about different specific issues, policies, activities, programs involving students with disabilities. That's what came out of the old version of the policy. However, the actual standards, what they're looking at though, has to do with two major areas for this policy. One is accessibility built in the buildings, and the other one has to do with hiring practices. Those are the two main areas that this council was set up to really look at. And if you go through in the standards and look at standard B, and they talk about who is the membership, that actually says that there should be one employee representing all of the bargaining units, and they should rotate from year to year to year, and starting off with PGCEA being the first representative. And that's because there's supposed to be such a focus on this, of the committee on the hiring of special education employees, staff to teach our students. So it's an interesting policy because it's very narrow in its focus. And there's no real conversation at all in the policy as it relates to the Individuals with Disabilities Act, which has to do with all our students who receive special education services, as well as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is an anti-discrimination act for students with disabilities. So so that is what this is focused on. So we do have some comment from committee members of the DIAB, which I did not, of course, put any of that into this policy, because that's a decision that you all need to make in terms of what you would like to have added to the policy. And I guess the question is, do you want to expand the scope of what the committee is, this committee or this council is supposed to be focusing on in terms of the policy? And then how does that relate to what CCAC is actually focusing on also?
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. I'm going to see if there are any committee members that have questions or comments. It looks like Vice Chair Olivo has her hand up, so I want to open the floor for Vice Chair Olivo.
Thanks so much, Chair Moss and Ms. Welsh, for your work on this. I also really want to say thank you to Dr. Moss and Ms. Welsh for coming to the last DIAB meeting, to be there and to discuss the policy review process, and to really appreciate the DIAB committee for their hard work on not just this, having recommendations for this policy, but other work that they've been doing. I do think that we need a little bit more time on this, Chair Moss. We heard Ms. Welsh share some of her research, I guess, into what other LEAs in the state of Maryland do for this. I'd love to get just a little bit more information specifically on how other LEAs handle their special education subcommittees. Do they have more than one? Do they have one subcommittee or one committee that that has various subcommittees to handle all of these issues at once? I will say I am concerned about the fact that DIAB and CCAC are often, if not always, meeting on the same night, and how that limits the possibility for collaboration. I do also know that we need some legal analysis or feedback as well around the potential name change of the DIAB board. And so I would recommend to my colleagues that we do that initial research and really take our time on this and give it until the next meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair Olivo. I do want to, does any other committee members have questions or comments here as it relates to this? Seeing that there are none, I know Board Member Brown is coming back up. She might have something that she is a liaison to that committee as well with Vice Chair Olivo. But I do want to just name that we got a lot of recommendations from the Disability Issues Advisory Board, and they were, pretty strong recommendations that the system would need to deal with in terms of practices and procedures, and then there were policy recommendations. I also agree with you, Vice Chair Olivo. I do think we need to take our time and make sure we comb through each of those and make sure we get this right. I do have some concerns around the duplicative nature of the work that is happening across CCAC and DIAB. So if Miss, I'm fine with that. If the rest of the committee is fine with Miss Welsh doing a deep dive in terms of what other jurisdictions are doing to make sure we get this right, and we can bring this item back at our December meeting. Once more research has been done. I'm perfectly fine with that. We've got Board Member Brown who's back, and I know she's a liaison to Disability Issues Advisory Board. So I want to see if she has any comments or questions. Board Member Brown, Vice Chair Olivo recommended an additional phase of research to spend more time with this. But I know you lost. I'm not calling you out. I just want to give you space if you want to.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and kind of going over this. My apologies, I was having some technical difficulties. I was not sure if it was mentioned, because I know Robin Welsh had mentioned earlier in the call, she wasn't kind of sure about policy and what that entails. All the recommendations were sent to the superintendent and his team, and so they'll be taking a bit of a deeper dive into the policy and what can actually be done. As we've all stated before in prior meetings, we want to make sure that we don't do any overlapping when it comes to CCAC. We want to always just be fill in the gap. I think that's the best way to say that. And of course, we're all on the same team wanting to make sure that all of our students, whether they have disability, go through special education, that they are being treated with equity. And so it's really important for us to go through this. I do also want to call out something that DIAB did mention before, is that they wanted to possibly change the name. And so I was thinking about possibly going to legal to see if that's something that we needed to do or go through. I wasn't sure, maybe Robin can give some more context. But yeah, I wanted to make sure all of our I's were dotted and all of our T's were crossed. So I hope I didn't repeat anything that anyone said, but I did want to make sure that I gave that information. Thank you.
As far as the name, the name can absolutely be changed. I don't see that even being a legal issue. Unless Arthur's on the phone, he has a thought on it, but I don't think there is an issue. I would say, and you all have expressed it already, is the biggest issue is what is the role of CCAC and what is the role of DIAB, and is it duplicative? So
Yeah, so Ms. Welsh, what might be helpful is when you do your research and you come back in December, maybe Trinell can come and lay out for us what CCAC is doing and responsible for in DIAB, and talk about, kind of where we are with this. It may be good for Trinell Bowman and team to come as part of that so that the committee can have a full picture of what's happening. And maybe also at that time, if Board Member Brown is okay and Vice Chair Olivo, we can kind of get an update on where the district might be with the other recommendations that were sent to us that are really belong to the administration. It might be 2 opportunities to get that done. If y'all are okay with that, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Briggs, are you okay with this? You haven't chimed in. I want to make sure you're good. I'm not calling you out. I just want to make sure you're good. Ms. Welsh?
And I do know that the administration had put together some responses to DIAB's comments, and basically everything under the policy, of course, they said is outside of the superintendent's scope, only because policy goes with the board. But then all the other areas where they gave comments, that is where I think that the administration will be providing feedback.
Okay, perfect. So I don't think we need to do anything with this tonight, or do we want to just advance it just for revision approval? Just send it back to you all just to keep revising.
You mean keep it in discussion for this moment?
Okay.
I mean, is that what I'm asking? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't know if we have any more discussion around it, so I can just, just move this to revision approval and you just bring it back. It's not being advanced to public comment or anything like that.
But it's my question is, so because we haven't made any final decisions as far as what this will look like, I'm thinking that it probably, because normally in this next step, I would be sending this over to the superintendent and to the legal counsel for a review, but we haven't made any real changes yet because you want to first see all the research.
So we should postpone or table.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion from a committee member to?
Dr. Moss, I move that we postpone discussion of at policy number 1700.
Vice Chair Olivo made a motion that we postpone discussion around policy 1700. We don't need a second, small body. Ms. Johnson, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Brown.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
Awesome. Board policy 1700 Disability Issues Advisory Board will be postponed until the next policy and governance meeting for further consideration. All right, we got just 2 more things and we're out of here tonight. Policies for second consideration to advance for public comment. We have 3 of them tonight: policy 0104, policy 8103, policy 8265. The question is, shall the committee release the policies under agenda items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 for public comment? Is there any discussion? I do got one question that I should have asked. Ms. Welsh, on 8103, we probably should leave it alone until the state board finishes its work, right? Although they've issued the first step.
The only thing I did put in, so we had an 8103 when we met at the last time, we had did make a couple language changes as it relates to let me see if I can find it here.
Yeah, I saw your change. I just wanted to make sure we don't need to do anything while the state is pending its work.
So the only thing I did change is that I did put in that there would be a requirement to make sure that there's still always a quorum in person, because that is what's sitting in the regulations. But
Okay.
other than that, you can still, and we did talk about making sure we had language around what is a unforeseen circumstance. And I did put it in the definition because there was a concern about it being too restrictive and then too broad. So it was sort of like trying to find the middle ground. And so I added language: and unexpected and unanticipated events that are often outside a person's control and can alter plans or commitments.
Okay, well, I appreciate you. Thank you. The question is, shall the committee release the policies under agenda items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 for public comment? Ms. Johnson, will you please take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policies under agenda items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 will be released for public comment. Board members, there are a number of policies under consideration for first reader to the board. The policies under agenda items 9.1 through 9.10 were submitted for public comments. No public comments were received on these items. There is one on 9.1 though, that a board member reached out to me on, that we need clarification on, just to protect board members. And Attorney Horn could you clarify under, when you get chance, I think the board will need this before Thursday though. Under 9.1, employee use of social media and personal electronic devices, we need clarity on if Board of Education members should be following back and connecting on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, X with students, including SMOB and students in leadership positions. So this is restricted, but our SMOB actually will follow some of us on social media and we follow them back. So we need to get clarification whether or not that's illegal or not, because this board policy right now precludes us from being able to do this. And so I want to make sure no board members get in any trouble. So we need an opinion around this policy. And actually, board member Boozer Strother brought it to my attention. And so I wanted to make sure I brought it into the call. So I don't know what your read is on this, but we do need an opinion about it at some point. It doesn't preclude this policy from moving forward, but if you could get the committee and board an opinion around, given that it's the student member of the board, if there could be any connection on social media, and if your ruling is that it shouldn't be, I'd like to make sure our board members are unfollowing our student board member.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, y'all got any questions around that? Or comments? I'm just trying to protect us all. Thanks to board member Boozer Strother. She's looking ahead. All right. The policies under agenda items 9.1 through 9.10 were submitted for public comment. No public comments were received. The question is, shall the committee recommend the policies under agenda items 9.1 through 9.10 to the full board for enactment? There's no discussion. Ms. Johnson, will you please take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Ms. Oliva,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Brown.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. The policies under agenda items 9.1 through 9.10 will be recommended to the full board for consideration and enactment. The chair informs the public that the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will be December 16th, 2025. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information updates. Thank you all for great discussions and attendance. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 6:42. The November 11, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank y'all. Ms. Welsh,
Thank
do you have a
you.
second? Ms. Welsh, do you have a second? And Vice Chair Olivo, do you have a
Yes.
second?